They always vanished. But before that, they did things no one could explain. At first, it seemed like coincidence. Halloween pranks, teenage dares, small-town superstition. But in Willow Creek, Ohio, legends were never just legends. Since 1909, every 10 years, on the last night of October, one teenager would put on an old mask, and by morning, the town would never be the same again. Always one person. Always one night. Always the same ending. Disappearance. The first record came from 1909. 16-year-old Henry Caldwell. Quiet. Reserved. The son of a farmer. On Halloween night, neighbors heard someone wandering through yards, knocking on doors, calling the names of the dead. By dawn, 3 animals were found mutilated, their eyes carved out. Tracks led down to the river, where a strange mask was discovered. It looked carved from wood, yet smooth and cold as stone. Henry was gone. His bicycle still stood by the road, wheels slowly turning when they found it. 10 years later, in 1919, it happened again. Edward Lambert, son of the local sheriff, he hosted a Halloween costume party. Guests later said he wore a mask that seemed alive. After midnight, he left alone and set fire to a barn on the outskirts of town. 2 men died in the flames. The next morning, all they found was ash, and the same mask, untouched by fire. The papers called it the curse of the decades, but officially, no connection was ever confirmed. 1939. A girl named Mary Green called the police, claiming her brother Thomas had changed. When officers arrived, they found him sitting in a field, surrounded by dead sheep. He wore the mask. When an officer approached, Thomas whispered, "She doesn't want me to take it off." Then he smiled and ran toward the river. He was never seen again. The mask was sent to specialists in Cleveland. The report stated the material was unidentifiable. Not wood, not bone, not metal. "Warm to the touch, almost breathing," one examiner wrote. Next case, 1949. Walter Nash, 17. Bright, promising, quiet. On Halloween night, he asked a neighbor where he could see the river after dark. 2 hours later, the electricity in town flickered 3 times. By morning, his home was covered with scratches on the walls, words etched in by fingernails. See through the eyes of what came before. And beside them, the mask, soaked in blood. Walter was never found. By the 1950s, the legend was a curse the town whispered about. Elders said the mask chooses those who doubt who they are. Always teenagers, always in late October, when the air smells of rot and the ground turns soft. 1959. Joan Hatfield, 18, librarian's assistant. Her diary described recurring dreams, faces she didn't recognize, calling her name. On Halloween night, she stayed late in the library. Around midnight, a neighbor heard someone singing, a soft Latin hymn. By morning, the doors were open, books scattered, and on the floor, the imprint of a face pressed into the dust, as if someone had knelt and wept. The mask lay on her desk, on its surface, traces of tears. 1979. 3 high school students, Derek, Martha, and Paul, decided to make a short horror film about the cursed mask. The film reel was found days later. In the recording, Martha laughs nervously. "It's smiling at me." 5 minutes later, the camera falls. Then, chaos. A few seconds of heavy breathing and a distorted reflection of a figure wearing the mask. None of the teens returned home that night. The fire department found only fragments of clothing and scorched prints on the barn's walls. The mask lay nearby, intact. 1989. Ethan Reed, 17. Withdrawn. In his school essay, he wrote, "Sometimes I think if you wear a mask, you can stop being yourself." That Halloween, he entered a neighbor's house and stood silently by the old man's bed until he woke. Then he simply walked away. The next day, Ethan was gone. The mask, found by the river. 1999. Kevin Miller, amateur filmmaker. He set out to document the legend, and according to his friends, he found the mask. On the recovered videotape, he laughs, but the voice that follows isn't his. Then a sharp thud and a whisper. "You're mine now." The last case before silence. 2009. Allison Gray, 15. She ran a small blog about urban myths. A day before she disappeared, she posted a photo of the mask with the caption, "I want to understand what they saw." That night, 3 witnesses claimed they saw her walking barefoot on the bridge railings, the mask on her face, hands hanging by her sides. Then she was gone. Her body was never recovered. For a decade, there was nothing. until 2019. On October 31st, the mask was found again, by the river where it all began. And that same night, a boy named Noah Lang went missing. On his phone, one final voice memo remained. 3 words, "I hear her." When the mask was found in 2019, authorities called it a hoax, a Halloween prop, planted as a prank. But within a week, it became clear it wasn't a joke. At the site where it was discovered, near the river, beside the ruins of the old barn, police found something strange. Bare footprints, dozens of them. They led in both directions, toward the water and back, yet in the soft, deep mud, they never ended. No final step. As if whoever made them had simply vanished mid-stride. The mask was sent to a laboratory at the University of Toledo. The results were identical to those from 70 years earlier. Material, unidentifiable. Density, abnormally high. When heated to 800 degrees, it showed no reaction. But there was something else. During testing, a faint sound was recorded, barely audible. Spectrograms revealed it was a human voice, someone whispering from inside. Those files were never released. But one of the lab workers, Professor Alan Bennett, was found dead a month later in his home. A circle of salt on the floor, a message written on the wall in charcoal. "She listens when we say her name." After that, the case was sealed. Shortly after, the Willow Creek Gazette received an unmarked package. Inside, a flash drive and a letter. This story isn't over. She's waiting for a new face. The file was named Mask Footage 01.mp4. The footage showed a boy, believed to be Noah Lang, sitting in a basement, speaking directly to the camera. "I can't throw it away. It always comes back. I hear footsteps. Sometimes I think, it's me." In the corner behind him, for just a few frames, something appears. A shadowed figure wearing the mask. But the reflection in the lens shows a different face. Not his. After a brief article about the footage was published, the journalist vanished. His car was found on the road to the river. On the windshield, a single handprint, pressed from the inside. From then on, the case faded into rumor. But fragments of documentation survived. One file, labeled Interview Number 47, records testimony from a woman named Sarah Mitchell, neighbor to the Lang family. She claimed that on the night Noah disappeared, she heard a knock at her window. When she looked out, the boy was standing there. His eyes glowed like light reflected from water. She said, "He didn't speak, he just lifted his hand, like he was putting something over his face." Then he was gone. Sarah moved away soon after. Her house stands empty now, windows boarded up. But neighbors say that, at night, they sometimes see a dim light flicker in the basement, as if someone is sitting there, staring at the wall. In 2021, a short-lived podcast appeared online called Whispers of Willow Creek. The host's voice was distorted, identity unknown. Each episode lasted exactly 10 minutes, each one released on November 1st. In the 3rd episode, a whisper could be heard, identical in tone and pattern to the lab recordings of the mask. The final line said, "I'm waiting." 8 years left. Within 24 hours, the podcast vanished from all platforms. Between 2019 and 2023, 5 new unexplained incidents were reported across the Willow Creek region. In every case, a teenager, loosely connected to the legend. One of them, 17-year-old Zach Harper, was found alive in the woods, catatonic. On his face, a faint impression, identical to the inner texture of the mask, as if it had been pressed against his skin. When he finally spoke, he said only, "She wanted me to become her." A week later, Zach disappeared from the hospital without a trace. In 2024, the city demolished what remained of the old bridge, the one where Allison Gray was last seen. Workers later reported an unsettling detail. Beneath the beams, they found traces of paint forming the same pattern as the mask, and a thin layer of soot, as if the bridge had already burned once before. Some locals believe the mask isn't an object at all, but a cycle, a pattern that repeats, searching every decade for a new face to wear. They say that when you put it on, you don't see who you were. You see who you'll become if you let it. Now it's October again in Willow Creek, and the town is waiting. The old stay indoors after dark. Children don't celebrate Halloween. And near the riverbank, where the barn once stood, someone has left a lantern burning. Beneath it, a shape in the dirt, resembling a face. No footprints nearby. The narrator pauses. Paper rustles. According to official records, between 1909 and 2019, there were 10 disappearances. All between October 31st and November 1st. Each time, the mask Each time, a different teenager. If the pattern hasn't broken, the next should occur. In 2029, silence, then the faint turning of a page. But there's one more detail. The final report states the mask was never recovered, only a mark on the wall of the room where it was kept, as if someone took it off and wore it. Soft static. The narrator's voice lowers, almost a whisper. If you found this story interesting, don't forget to subscribe. But if you hear breathing behind you on Halloween night, don't turn around. In the spring of 2025, a maintenance crew discovered an unmarked box in the basement of the old Willow Creek Police Department. On the lid, barely visible beneath a layer of dust, were the faded words, Case 112. Mask. Inside were photographs, an old audio cassette, and several damp, mold-stained pages. The photographs were unsettling. Each showed a group of teenagers, every picture taken roughly 10 years apart. Different faces, different eras. But every group stood in the same pose, hands down, eyes forward, staring directly into the camera. And in the background, barely visible, the faint outline of a figure wearing what seemed to be the mask. On the back of the final photo, dated 2019, someone had written in pencil, "Taken before it began." The cassette ran 6 minutes. The first 2 were silent. Then came a soft rustling sound, as if someone were adjusting the microphone. A teenage boy's voice followed. I thought it was just a story, but when I put it on, I felt someone breathing inside. Then, the creak of a door, and a second voice, lower, almost inaudible. "Now, you're me." After that, a sharp thud, like the microphone hitting the floor. Then silence. When archivists attempted to digitize the tape, they noticed something strange. With every replay, new words appeared, sentences that hadn't been there before. The final time the recording was played, during an internal review, a whisper was heard at the end. The next one is near. A week later, the archive was sealed again. But there's one inconsistency that never made it into the official report. On the lid of the box, there was a fresh smudge, as if someone had recently touched it. And beside it, on the concrete floor, an imprint, not of a shoe, but of a texture. A pattern identical to the inner surface of the mask. That night, when a janitor came to lock the basement, the lights went out. She later said she heard breathing, right beside her ear. When the emergency light flickered back on, there was a face on the wall in front of her, drawn not with paint, but with soot. She quit the next morning and left town. Now the box is listed as missing. It doesn't appear in any database, but some claim they've seen a similar container in the Toledo County Archives, in a restricted section, closed to the public. Employees say that at night, they sometimes hear the sound of a cassette tape rewinding, the film catching between the reels. The report concludes, nothing unusual, possible equipment malfunction. But at the bottom of the page, there's a signature, handwritten, impossible to forge. The name reads, Ann Lang.